My name is Zoe, and everything in my life fell apart in less than a month. It started right after the funeral. The flowers hadn't even fully dried when my daughter gave me a choice that didn't feel like a choice at all. I remember standing in the kitchen that used to be mine, my fingers still smelling faintly of the lilies people had brought to say goodbye to my husband. 43 years of marriage, and suddenly I was alone in a house that no longer felt like home. Zoe, we need to talk. The way my daughter said it, sharp, controlled, told me this wasn't going to be a gentle conversation. Lila had always been decisive, but lately there was something colder in her voice, something unfamiliar. She placed her handbag on the counter, like she was about to close a business deal. This situation isn't working anymore. I blinked, still trying to process what she meant. What situation? You living here. That's when I realized something had shifted permanently. My house, was no longer mine. My husband had left everything to her. At the time, it hadn't bothered me. We trusted each other. Families don't think about legal ownership when love is involved. But love doesn't always survive loss. I can't support you anymore, she continued. I have my own life, my own responsibilities. I felt the cup slip from my hands before I even registered it. It shattered on the floor, coffee spreading like a stain that couldn't be cleaned. It's only been 3 weeks, I whispered. I know, but life doesn't stop. There was no anger in her voice. That was the worst part. Just logic. Just distance. I tried to reason with her. Told her about my small pension, how I could contribute, how I didn't need much. She laughed, not cruelly, but dismissively. That won't even cover basic expenses. Then she said something that changed everything. I found you a job. A job. At 68. I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. She explained quickly, already scrolling through her phone. Some wealthy man needed full-time care. Live-in position. Good money. No medical work, just assistance, companionship. You used to be a nurse, she added. It's perfect. Perfect. I hadn't worked in decades. The world had changed. Medicine had changed. I had changed. But none of that mattered. Because then she said it. If you don't take it, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I stood in front of a house so large it didn't feel real. It looked like something out of a movie. Perfect gardens, long driveway, windows that reflected a life I couldn't imagine belonging to. I almost turned around, but I didn't, because I had nowhere else to go. The woman who opened the door introduced herself as Margaret, the house manager. She was polite but distant, the kind of person who had seen too many people come and go to get attached. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. She explained the job as we walked. Routine, structure, discipline. The man I'd be caring for had been injured years ago. He needed help with daily life, but more than that, he needed someone constant. He can be difficult, she warned. You wouldn't be the first to try. That didn't reassure me. When we reached the study, she paused before opening the door. Then I saw him. He was sitting by the window in a wheelchair, looking out at the garden like he wasn't really part of it. His hair was silver, his posture rigid, his presence overwhelming. He turned when we entered, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. There was something about his face, something familiar in a way that didn't make sense. His eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, as if he was trying to remember something just out of reach. Zoe, he repeated after Margaret introduced me. The way he said my name sent a strange chill through me. Have we met before? I forced a small smile. I don't think so. But even as I said it, something inside me stirred. The interview wasn't really an interview. He asked questions, but it felt like he was studying me rather than evaluating me, watching my expressions, listening too closely. When he offered me the job, the salary made my head spin. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt uneasy. That night, I moved into the house. My room was beautiful. Too beautiful. Like a hotel I didn't belong in. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the suitcase that held what was left of my life. And for the first time, I allowed myself to admit the truth. I wasn't here because I wanted to be. I was here because I had been pushed out of everything else. The first few days were exhausting. He was precise, demanding, and completely unforgiving when things weren't done his way. Time mattered. Order mattered. Control mattered. But there were moments. Moments when he would fall silent mid-sentence. Moments when I'd catch him looking at me like he was searching for something buried deep in his memory. It made me uncomfortable, because I felt it too. That strange pull. That quiet recognition I couldn't explain. One evening, as I unpacked the last of my things, I found an old box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were photographs from a life I barely allowed myself to remember anymore. I hesitated before opening it. Then I did. And everything changed. I didn't open that box right away. For a long time, I just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at it like it might open itself and spill everything I had spent decades trying to forget. My fingers hovered over the lid, trembling slightly, not from age, but from something deeper. Fear, maybe, or anticipation. I wasn't sure which one scared me more. Finally, I exhaled slowly and lifted it. Inside were pieces of a different life. Photographs, old letters, a ribbon that had once tied my hair back when I was young enough to believe that love alone could shape the future. The scent of paper and time rose up, and suddenly the quiet, polished room around me faded into the background. I picked up the first photograph. It was harmless enough, me in my early 20s, standing outside a small cafe, sunlight in my eyes, laughter frozen in time. I barely recognized that version of myself. She looked fearless, certain, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I flipped to the next, and then the next, until my breath caught. There he was. Not the man downstairs in the wheelchair. Not the cold, controlled figure who measured his coffee to the minute. No, this was someone else entirely. A young man with dark hair, standing too close to me in the frame, his arm wrapped around my waist like it belonged there. Like I belonged there. My hand tightened around the photograph. Ethan. The name slipped out before I could stop it. Ethan Blake. I hadn't said that name in nearly 50 years. My heart began to race as memories flooded back, faster than I could control them. The way he used to laugh, loud and careless, like nothing in the world could touch him. The way he looked at me, like I was the only person who mattered. The way he made promises that felt too big for reality, but I believed them anyway. I kept turning the pages. There we were at a county fair, sharing something sugary and ridiculous, both of us laughing like children. Another photo, him trying to teach me how to dance in my tiny apartment, nearly knocking over a lamp while we spun around. And then one by the lake, my head resting on his shoulder, both of us staring at the water like we had all the time in the world. But we didn't. The last photograph stopped me completely. A train station. I felt the memory before I fully saw it. The cold air, the noise of engines, the weight of goodbye pressing down on my chest. In the photo, I was crying, and he was holding my face in his hands, saying something I already knew by heart. I'll come back for you. He had said it like it was a promise written in stone. I just need time. I need to build something first. Then I'll come back, and we'll have everything. And I had believed him. God help me. I had believed every word. I reached deeper into the box and found the letter. The letter. My fingers shook as I unfolded it, even though I already knew what it said. I had read it so many times back then that the words were etched into me. He had made it. He had done everything he said he would, and he was coming back. But the date was everything. It had arrived too late. By the time that letter reached me, I was already married, already someone else's wife, already living a life that had been built on the assumption that Ethan Blake had forgotten me. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. For years, I told myself a simpler story, that he had moved on, that he had chosen ambition over love, that I had simply been a chapter in his past. It was easier that way, cleaner, safer. But the truth sitting in my hands was far more complicated. He hadn't forgotten me. He had come back, and I hadn't been there. A sharp knock at the door startled me so badly I nearly dropped everything. I shoved the letter back into the box, my heart pounding like I'd been caught doing something wrong. "Come in," I called, my voice not as steady as I wanted. Margaret stepped inside. "He's asking for you." Of course he was. I nodded quickly and stood up, smoothing my clothes, trying to steady myself. But as I followed her down the long hallway, one thought echoed in my mind louder than anything else. Ethan. It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. And yet, when I entered the study, he was already looking at the door, as if he had been waiting for me specifically, not just for assistance, not just for routine. For me. "Zoe," he said quietly. Something in his voice had changed. I moved closer, careful, controlled, pretending nothing was different. "Do you need something?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied my face again, intently, almost desperately now. "I want to ask you something," he said finally. "And I need you to be honest with me." My chest tightened. "Of course." He turned his wheelchair slightly, positioning himself closer. "Have you ever been to a place called Silver Creek?" The world tilted. Silver Creek. I hadn't heard that name in decades, but it hit me instantly, like a door being thrown open in my mind. That was where I grew up, where everything had started, where I had met Ethan. I forced myself to stay still. "I don't think so," I said. But my voice betrayed me. He noticed. I saw it in his eyes. "There was a diner there," he continued slowly. "Small place. They made terrible coffee, but the milkshakes were unforgettable." My throat went dry. "And a lake," he added, "just outside town. People used to go there at night." I couldn't breathe. "I think," he said softly, "I knew someone from there." The silence between us stretched painfully. I could feel it, the truth hovering just beneath the surface, waiting to break through. But I wasn't ready. I didn't know if he was ready. "I'm sure you're mistaken," I said finally, forcing a polite smile. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't convincing. His gaze didn't leave my face. "Maybe," he murmured, but he didn't believe it. And neither did I. I turned to leave, needing distance, needing air, needing time to think. But just as I reached the door, he spoke again. "You always liked yellow." I froze. My heart stopped. Slowly, I turned back. He wasn't looking at me anymore. His gaze had shifted toward the window, but his expression, it wasn't cold now. It wasn't controlled. It was something else. Something fragile. Something dangerously close to remembering. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph. That train station. That promise. And then I saw him as he was now, older, harder, changed by time, and something else I couldn't quite name. Could it really be him? Could Ethan Blake have become this man? By morning, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep pretending. Not for him. And not for myself. Because if I was right, then fate hadn't just brought me a job. It had brought me back to the one person I had never truly forgotten. I made the decision before the sun had fully risen. There was no point in pretending anymore. Not after the photograph, not after the letter, and certainly not after what he had said the night before. People don't remember details like that by accident. Yellow dresses, milkshakes, a lake in a town no one ever talks about unless they've lived it. He knew. Maybe not everything yet, but enough. And the truth was, I knew too. I found him in the glass conservatory, the quietest place in the house. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long reflections across the marble floor. He had a newspaper in his hands, but he wasn't reading it. His eyes were fixed somewhere beyond the page, lost in thought. Or memory. "Good morning," I said, setting his coffee down exactly where he liked it. He looked up at me slowly, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. There was something different in his expression now. Less guarded. More searching. "Did you sleep?" he asked.
No.
A faint smile touched his lips. Neither did I. That almost made me laugh, but there was too much tension in my chest for anything light. He folded the newspaper carefully, placing it aside with a precision that felt almost deliberate, like he was preparing for something important. "I kept thinking about Silver Creek," he said. "About that diner. About someone who used to argue with me about what flavor milkshake was better." My heart started to pound again. I didn't sit down right away. I wasn't sure my legs would hold me if I did. "And what flavor was it?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze. "Strawberry," he said. "You hated vanilla. Said it was boring." The world went silent. There it was. Not a guess. Not a coincidence. A memory. I let out a slow breath and lowered myself into the chair across from him. My hands rested in my lap, but they weren't steady. "It was too plain," I said softly. "I told you that 100 times. His eyes widened, just slightly, but enough. "Zoe," he whispered. I shook my head gently.
No.
Not Zoe. The name felt strange now, like something I had been hiding behind without realizing it. For a moment, neither of us moved. "I used to go by a different name," I continued. "A long time ago." He leaned forward in his chair, his fingers tightening slightly on the armrest. "Say it," he said. My throat tightened. I hadn't spoken that name out loud in decades. It belonged to a version of me that had been buried under years of marriage, motherhood, responsibility, survival. But it was still mine. "Clara," I said. The reaction was immediate. It hit him like a shock. I saw it in the way his breath caught, in the way his shoulders stiffened, in the way his eyes, those same eyes, filled with something raw and unguarded. "Clara," he repeated, like he was testing the reality of it. We stared at each other across the space between us, and suddenly the years didn't matter as much. They were still there, written in the lines of our faces, in the heaviness of our movements, but something deeper had cut through them. Recognition. "You changed your name," he said. "Yes." "Why?" I hesitated, then gave the only honest answer I had. Because it was easier to forget. That seemed to hit him harder than anything else. "I never forgot," he said quietly. Something in my chest twisted painfully at those words. "I thought you did," I admitted. "Your letters stopped. You disappeared." "I didn't stop writing." That made me look up sharply.
What?
His jaw tightened slightly, like even now the memory still bothered him. "My business partners," he said. "They thought you would hold me back, that I needed to focus on building something bigger. They intercepted my letters, told me you had moved on." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "I waited. For years. I thought you had left me behind." "I came back," he said, his voice low and steady. "I came back for you." My heart dropped. "I know." He froze. "You know?" I nodded slowly. "I got your letter. The one where you said you were coming home." And I swallowed hard. It came 3 weeks too late. The silence that followed was heavy. Not empty, just full of everything that had been lost between us. I was already married, I finished. He closed his eyes briefly, like he had expected that answer but still couldn't escape the weight of it. I stood in front of your old house, he said after a moment. They told me you had moved, that you were gone. I didn't know where to find you. I didn't know where to look for you either. We sat there, two people separated not by choice, but by timing, by interference, by decisions made for us instead of by us. I thought you chose something better, he admitted. A safer life. I let out a quiet breath. I thought you chose ambition over me. He gave a small, bitter smile. Looks like we were both wrong. That almost made me laugh, but the emotion caught somewhere between sadness and relief. For a while, we just looked at each other. Not as strangers. Not as employer and employee. But as two people trying to understand what had just happened. What was his name? He asked finally. My husband. He nodded. Daniel. Did you love him? I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know, but because the answer was complicated. Yes, I said finally, in a different way. He seemed to understand that. He was a good man? He was. That was true. Whatever else had happened in my life, whatever secrets or regrets might have existed, Daniel had been kind to me.
Steady.
Reliable.
Safe. Safe.
I'm glad, he said quietly. You deserve that. I studied his face, the man he had become. There were traces of the boy I had known, hidden beneath years of experience, and something darker, something harder. What about you? I asked. Did you ever? He shook his head before I could finish.
No.
The answer came too quickly to be anything but honest. I tried, he admitted. Or, at least I told myself I did. But it never felt right. No one ever, he stopped, then gave a small shrug. No one was you. I felt that one. Deep. It settled somewhere in my chest, heavy and impossible to ignore. You built all of this instead, I said, gesturing slightly around us. Yes. Was it worth it? He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, I don't know. That honesty surprised me. I have more money than I could ever spend, he continued. More success than I ever imagined. But none of it felt complete. Until now. He looked at me. Until I saw you walk through that door. My breath caught. There was something dangerous about the way he said it, not in a threatening way, but in a way that felt too real, too immediate. Like everything we had buried was suddenly alive again. This isn't simple, I said quietly. We're not the same people we were. I know. Too much time has passed. I know that too. I leaned back slightly, trying to create space where there didn't seem to be any. Then what are we doing? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Finding out what's left. That answer stayed with me. It didn't promise anything unrealistic. It didn't pretend the past could be undone. It simply acknowledged that something still existed and that maybe, just maybe, it was worth exploring. I looked down at my hands, at the faint marks of time, at the life I had lived. I don't want to replace anything, I said. Not my past. Not yours. I'm not asking you to, and I don't want pity or obligation. You won't get either. I believed him. That was the surprising part. Despite everything, despite the years, the misunderstandings, the distance, I believed him. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. When his hand closed around mine, it felt familiar. Different, but familiar. I don't know what this is yet, he said quietly. Neither do I. But I'd like to find out. I looked at him, really looked this time, at the man he had become, at the boy I had once loved, still hidden somewhere beneath the surface. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear. not regret.
Hope.
I'd like that too, I said. For a while, things felt almost peaceful. Not easy. Nothing about this situation was easy, but calm in a way I hadn't experienced in years. We didn't rush into anything dramatic. There were no grand declarations, no impulsive decisions. Instead, it was small things. Conversations over breakfast that lasted longer than they needed to. Quiet evenings in the conservatory where we didn't always speak, but the silence felt comfortable instead of heavy. Ethan, no, I still had to remind myself, the man I used to know as Ethan was different now. Harder in some ways, sharper around the edges, but there were moments when the past slipped through. A certain way he laughed. The way his voice softened when he said my name. The way he still noticed small details, like whether I was cold or tired before I said a word. And I changed too. Without realizing it, I stopped feeling like a guest in that house. My steps became more certain. My voice steadier. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living again. And that scared me more than anything else. Because I knew it wouldn't last. It never does. The first crack came exactly when I expected it. My phone rang during lunch, and the moment I saw Lila's name on the screen, my stomach tightened. I hadn't spoken to her properly since I took the job. A few short messages. Nothing real. Nothing honest. She's calling, I said quietly. He looked up from his plate, his expression immediately shifting. Do you want to answer?
No.
But my thumb hovered over the screen anyway. You should, he said gently. Running from it won't make it easier. I sighed and answered. Hello. Zoe. Her voice was tight, controlled. Too controlled. I heard something interesting today. Of course she did. Small towns have a way of turning whispers into headlines. What did you hear? I asked, even though I already knew. That you've been seen around town. With him. There it was. I closed my eyes briefly. His name is. I don't care what his name is, she cut in sharply. What I care about is what people are saying. I felt something shift inside me then. A quiet irritation rising to the surface. And what exactly are they saying? That my mother is getting a little too comfortable with a rich employer, she replied. That it doesn't look professional. I let out a slow breath. I'm not doing anything wrong. Really, she shot back. Because from what I hear, you're spending time with him outside of work.
Shopping.
Walking. Acting like. She hesitated, then said it anyway. Like you're more than his caregiver. I glanced across the table at him. He was watching me carefully now, reading every expression on my face. I am more than that, I said. Silence. Then, what does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Her voice dropped, colder now. Are you serious right now? Yes. You've known him for what, 2 weeks? I almost laughed. You don't understand. Then explain it to me, she snapped. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're throwing yourself at the first wealthy man who shows you attention. That hit harder than I expected. Watch your tone, I said quietly. No, you watch yours, she fired back. Dad hasn't even been gone that long, and you're already what? Replacing him. The words landed like a slap. I felt anger rise, real anger, sharp and undeniable. I'm not replacing anyone, I said. And I'm allowed to live my life. Not like this. And how exactly am I supposed to live it? I demanded. Alone? Quiet? Waiting for the rest of my life to pass just to make you comfortable? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you meant. There was a pause. Then her voice softened. But not in a kind way. In a calculating way. He's rich, isn't he? I went still. That's what this is about, she continued. You saw an opportunity. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think I'm using him? I think you're being practical, she said. You needed security. He needed care. It's convenient. My grip tightened around the phone. That's not what this is. Then what is it? I didn't answer. Because how do you explain something like this? How do you explain a love that started decades ago, got lost in time, and somehow found its way back? You wouldn't understand, I said finally. Try me.
Before I could stop myself, I said it.
I knew him before. Silence again. But this time it was different. What? I knew him. A long time ago. Before I met your father. I could practically hear her trying to process it. That's not funny. I'm not joking. You expect me to believe that this is some kind of romantic coincidence? She asked, her voice rising. That you just happened to end up working for someone from your past? I didn't know it was him, I said. Not at first. That's very convenient. Something inside me snapped. I'm not lying to you. The room went quiet. Even he looked surprised by the force in my voice. I didn't plan this, I continued, my chest rising and falling quickly. I didn't expect it. And I certainly didn't take this job for money. Then why did you take it? She demanded. The answer came out before I could soften it. Because you gave me no choice. That did it. The silence on the other end turned heavy, defensive. I gave you an opportunity. You gave me an ultimatum. I was trying to help you by throwing me out of my own home. It wasn't your home anymore, she snapped. The words hung in the air between us. Final. Sharp. True. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of that settle. You made that very clear, I said quietly. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she said something that changed the direction of the conversation completely. I want to meet him. I opened my eyes. What? I want to meet him, she repeated. If this is real, if you're serious about whatever this is, then I need to see it for myself. I hesitated. This was exactly what I had been dreading. You don't trust me, I said. No, she replied honestly. Not when it comes to this. I almost argued, almost refused. But deep down, I knew this was inevitable.
Fine, I said.
You can come tomorrow. Good. She hung up without another word. I lowered the phone slowly, my hand slightly shaking. Well, he said after a moment, that sounded pleasant. I let out a dry laugh. You heard enough? Enough. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. She's going to hate you, I said. I doubt that. You don't know her. No, he admitted. But I know people. And I know what fear sounds like. I frowned slightly. Fear. She's afraid of losing control, he said calmly. Of losing you. I considered that. Maybe he was right. Or maybe he was giving her too much credit. She's also going to think I'm after your money, I added. He raised an eyebrow. Are you? I stared at him. Seriously? I have to ask. The question stung more than I expected. After everything we just talked about? It's not about you, he said. It's about experience. I shook my head slowly. I don't want your money, I said. I don't care about your house, your business, any of it. Then what do you want? I met his eyes. You. That seemed to catch him off guard. For once, he didn't have an immediate response. Good, he said finally. Because you're not getting the money. I blinked. What? I've already arranged for most of it to go elsewhere, he said simply. Charities. Foundations. Causes that matter. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was serious. You're telling me this now? I'm telling you because it's relevant, he replied. If your daughter thinks there's an inheritance waiting, she should know there isn't. I let out a quiet breath. That's going to make tomorrow interesting. He smiled slightly. I was hoping it would. I shook my head, half amused, half nervous. You're enjoying this, aren't you? A little, he admitted. But more importantly, I'm not going anywhere. I looked at him carefully. You mean that?
Ido.
For the first time since the call, I felt something steady settle inside me. Not certainty, but something close. Tomorrow, I said. Tomorrow, he agreed. And as we sat there in the quiet dining room, I realized something important. The past had found us. Now the real question was, would the present survive it? Lila arrived exactly on time. Of course she did. She had always been precise when she wanted control over a situation, and today wasn't just a visit, it was an inspection. I watched her through the window as she stepped out of her car, adjusting her coat, smoothing her hair, checking her reflection like she was about to walk into a negotiation instead of a conversation with her mother. My stomach tightened. She's here, I said quietly. He closed the file he'd been pretending to read and turned his chair toward me. Do you want me to take the lead? I shook my head.
No.
But stay. Always. That word settled something in me before I even realized I needed it. We met her in the study. Not the living room, not the dining area. He had chosen the study on purpose. A controlled environment.
His territory.
And as soon as Lila walked in, I could see she felt it. Her eyes scanned everything. The shelves, the furniture, the quiet wealth that surrounded us. It wasn't admiration. It was calculation. Mr. Blake, she said, extending her hand with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes.
He shook it briefly.
Lila.
No worms. No hostility.
Just balance. She sat down across from him, crossing her legs neatly, folding her hands in her lap. If someone didn't know her, they'd think she was calm,
composed,
professional. I knew better. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she began. I think it's important that we discuss what's going on here. What exactly is going on here? He asked calmly. She glanced at me, then back at him. My mother's situation, she said. Her living arrangement. I see. There was a pause. I'm concerned, she continued. She's been through a lot recently, and I'm not sure she's in the best state of mind to be making major life decisions. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm sitting right here, I said. Yes, and I'm talking about you, she replied without hesitation. That's enough, I said quietly. But he lifted a hand slightly, stopping me. Let her speak, he said. Lila took that as permission. My mother has always been emotional, she went on. She gets attached easily. She trusts people too quickly. And right now, she's vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? He asked. To being taken advantage of. The room went still. I felt heat rise in my chest. You think he's using me? I asked. I think this situation is inappropriate, she said. A caregiver becoming personally involved with her employer? Moving into his private life? It raises serious concerns. It raises assumptions, he corrected calmly. She ignored that. And then there's the financial aspect, she added. My mother isn't in a stable position. She might be influenced by the security you offer. There it was. The real issue. Money. I don't need his money, I said firmly. You needed something, she shot back. You took this job for a reason. Yes, I said. Because you told me to either work or leave. Her expression flickered, just for a second, but she recovered quickly. That's not the point. It is the point. He leaned back slightly, watching the exchange with quiet interest. What do you think would be best for your mother? He asked Lila. She straightened, clearly ready for that question. I think she should come home, she said. Back to her family. Somewhere safe. Somewhere she can think clearly, without outside influence. Home, he repeated. You mean the house you asked her to leave? Lila's jaw tightened. That was a misunderstanding. Was it? I was under stress, she said. Grief affects people differently. And your reaction to grief was to remove your mother from her home? He asked. I almost smiled. Lila wasn't used to being challenged like this. She had options, Lila insisted. Such as? She could have found an apartment. With what income? He asked calmly. She has savings. 800 a month, he said. That doesn't cover rent in this area, let alone everything else. Lila hesitated. It's not impossible. It's not reasonable, he corrected. Silence. For the first time, I saw uncertainty creep into her posture. You're missing the bigger picture, she said finally. This isn't just about money. It's about boundaries. About what's appropriate. What's appropriate, he repeated slowly, is treating your mother with respect. I am treating her with respect. No, he said quietly. You're treating her like a problem that needs to be managed. That hit
Hard.
Lila's composure cracked slightly. You don't know anything about our family, she said. I know enough. Oh, really? She snapped. And what exactly do you think you know? I know that you gave her an ultimatum, he said. And I know that the only reason you're here now is because you're afraid of losing something. Her eyes flashed. I'm not afraid of anything. Yes, you are, he said calmly. You're afraid she won't need you anymore. The room went completely silent. That wasn't what I expected. And judging by her expression, it wasn't what she expected either. That's ridiculous, she said, but her voice had lost some of its strength. Is it? He asked. She looked at me then, really looked this time. And for a brief moment, I saw something underneath the anger. Not control. Not calculation. Something else. I just want to make sure you're not making a mistake, she said, quieter now. I'm not, I replied. You barely know him. I know him better than you think. Her eyes narrowed. Because of your past? Yes. That was 50 years ago, she said. People change. I know, I said. So have I. And you think this, whatever this is real? I didn't hesitate. Yes. She let out a sharp breath and stood up, pacing slightly before turning back to us. You're serious, she said, more to herself than to me. Yes. She looked at him now, studying him carefully. And you, she asked, what are your intentions? He didn't flinch. I care about her, he said simply. That's not enough. It is for now. For now, she repeated. We're not rushing anything, he said. But we're also not pretending this doesn't matter. She crossed her arms. And what happens when it ends? It won't, he said. The certainty in his voice made even me pause. You can't guarantee that, she said. No, he admitted. But I can guarantee that I won't walk away from her. She searched his face, looking for doubt. She didn't find any. And the money? She asked finally. He smiled slightly. There is no money. She blinked. What? I've already arranged my estate, he said. Everything goes to charity. I turned to him, surprised even though he had told me before. Lila stared at him. You're serious? Completely. She looked back at me slowly. So there's nothing, she said. No security. No inheritance. I told you, I said. That's not why I'm here. She let out a long breath and sank back into the chair. For the first time since she arrived, she looked unsure. I don't understand this, she admitted. You don't have to, I said. You just have to accept it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up again. I need time, she said. That's fair. She hesitated near the door, then looked back at me. I still think you're making a mistake, she said. Maybe, I replied. But it's my mistake to make. She held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded slightly. Not agreement, but not rejection either. And then she left. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed felt completely different from before. Lighter. Interesting woman, he said after a moment. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. That's one way to describe her. She's not as cold as she pretends to be. I looked at the door thoughtfully. No, I said quietly. She's not. He turned toward me. And you, he asked. Are you all right? I considered the question. My daughter had just challenged everything about my life, questioned my choices, my feelings, my future. And yet, yes, I said. I really was. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of losing everything. 6 months passed before I truly understood how much my life had changed. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic, life-altering moment. It happened slowly, quietly, like sunlight moving across a room. One day you don't notice it, and the next you realize everything looks different. I wasn't the same woman who had stood outside that house with a suitcase and nowhere to go. And this wasn't just a place I worked anymore. It was home. Ethan and I never rushed into anything, despite what Lila had feared. There was no sudden leap, no reckless decision. Instead, we built something steady, honest, something that didn't try to recreate the past, but didn't deny it either. We learned each other again. The man he had become wasn't the boy I once loved, but sometimes, when he laughed unexpectedly or said something without thinking, I would catch a glimpse of him. And I realized something important. I didn't want the past back. I wanted this version of him. And he felt the same.
It was in the small things.
The way he started asking my opinion on everything from business decisions to what flowers should be planted in the garden. The way he insisted on having breakfast together every morning, no matter how busy the day was supposed to be. The way he would watch me when he thought I wasn't looking, not with curiosity anymore, but with something deeper. Recognition. Belonging. One evening, we were sitting in the conservatory, the same place where everything had begun to unravel and then somehow come back together again. The sky outside was fading into soft shades of orange and gold, and the air felt calm in a way that made you believe nothing could disturb it. I've been thinking, he said. That usually means something serious, I replied lightly. It does. I turned toward him, sensing the shift in his tone. I don't want you to feel like you're here, because you have nowhere else to go, he said. I don't want this to be an arrangement. It isn't, I said immediately. I know that, he said, but I need to say it anyway. He reached for my hand, his fingers wrapping around mine with a quiet certainty that still surprised me sometimes. I want you here because you choose to be, he continued, not because of circumstance, not because of the past, because of now. I felt my chest tighten slightly. I do choose this, I said. I know, he said, but I also want to give you something more than that. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Not because I didn't understand what it was, but because I did. You're not serious, I said softly. I've never been more serious. I stared at the box, then at him. We're not 20 anymore, I said. I know. This isn't some unfinished story. We can just pick up where we left off. I know that too. Then what are you doing? I asked. He opened the box. Inside wasn't a large diamond or anything extravagant.
Just a simple ring.
Elegant. Quiet.
Real.
Starting something new, he said. I felt tears gather in my eyes before I could stop them. This isn't about fixing the past, he continued. And it's not about replacing anything you had before. It's about what we have now, what we can still build. I shook my head slightly, overwhelmed. This is crazy, I whispered. Probably, he admitted, but it's also honest. I looked at the ring again, then at him. You're asking me to marry you, I said. Yes. At our age. Yes. After everything that's happened. Yes. There was no hesitation in him. No doubt. Just certainty. And that scared me. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. I spent so many years thinking that part of my life was over, I said quietly. That love that only happens once. That what we had was something that belonged to the past. And now, he asked. I took a slow breath. Now I think maybe I was wrong. He smiled slightly. Good. I laughed softly through the tears. You're very confident. I've waited long enough, he said. I'm not wasting any more time. That hit me deeper than anything else he had said, because it was true. We didn't have the luxury of waiting, of doubting, of pretending there would always be more time. I looked down at my hand, the same hand that had once worn another ring, belonged to another life. And I realized something important. This didn't erase that. It didn't replace it. It simply added something new. I don't need anything grand, I said finally. No big ceremony. No expectations. Good, he said, because I don't either. I smiled faintly. You really thought this through. I've had a few decades to think about it, he replied. That made me laugh. And then finally I nodded. Yes. The word felt simple, but it carried everything. Relief. Hope. A future I hadn't expected to have again. He slid the ring onto my finger, his hands steady despite everything. And for a moment, the world felt incredibly still, like time itself had paused just long enough to let us catch up to it. We didn't tell many people. There was no need. The wedding happened quietly a few weeks later. Just us, a witness, and a promise that felt more real than anything I had ever experienced before. I didn't wear white. He didn't make a speech. But when we looked at each other and said the words, I knew something had settled into place. Not perfectly, not magically, but truthfully. Lila didn't come. Not at first. She called a few days later, her voice hesitant in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. You actually did it, she said. Yes. There was a pause. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Another pause. Are you happy? That question mattered more than anything else. I looked across the room at him. He was reading, completely unaware that I was watching him. And I smiled. Yes, I said. I am. She didn't respond right away. I'm still trying to understand it, she admitted. That's okay. I was angry, she said quietly. Not just at you. At everything. I know. I thought you were making a mistake. Maybe I am, I said gently. But it's mine to make. She let out a soft breath. I miss you, she said. That almost broke me. I'm still here, I replied. There was a long silence. Then, can I visit? I closed my eyes for a second. Yes. When she came, she was different. Not completely, but enough. Less sharp. Less certain. She watched us carefully, like she was trying to understand something that didn't fit into her version of the world. And slowly, she did. Not all at once, but little by little. That was enough. One evening, after she left, I sat outside with Ethan, watching the sky darken into night. Do you regret anything? He asked. I thought about it, about the years we lost, the choices we didn't get to make, the life that could have been. Then I looked at him, at the man sitting beside me, at the life we had now. No, I said, because the truth was simple. Sometimes you don't get the life you planned. Sometimes you lose things you thought you'd have forever. But sometimes, if you're lucky, life gives you a second chance. And this time, you don't let it slip away.